welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin, and this is a custom video for Jacob. All right, let me tell you a little bit about Jacob. He's from Vienna, and he's been into watches for about 10 years, but he's 19 years old, and his dad is a watch guy. His dad collects Omega, IWC, Jaeger, never really Rolex until about 10 years ago when his dad got, well, at least the first Rolex that Jacob saw, and he fell in love with it, all right? The dad, who is a doctor, got this from a former business partner, and it was a 16200. That's a Datejust with sort of a champagne dial, as Jacob calls it. It looks to me like a silver dial, but he calls it a pearl/champagne dial. And looking at it here, yeah, it looks to be on an Oyster bracelet, smooth bezel, and Jacob fell in love with it. Just recently, his dad gave him his first Rolex, a 1500, all right, a 1500. That's a 34 millimeter acrylic crystalled Oyster date, and it's got this same Oyster bracelet, smooth bezel, and the same dial color. So obviously great first watch, and I've been thinking a lot about why the doctor decided to give his son that watch, and it's a whole nother video, the speculation, but I think there's a lot of logical reasons why his dad might have decided to give him this watch as opposed to something else. I mean, keep in mind that we're talking about a doctor. He could probably afford something a lot, quote, better. But I think he actually made the right choice by giving Jacob this watch. And again, we'll perhaps tackle that in another video. Now, let's get to his question. And we're talking about Jacob here because he likes this watch, but I think he's ready for watch number 2, all right? So I'm going to put the whole email in the description of this video. You can read it for yourself. But let's start at the kind of pertinent part. And he's talking about this 34 millimeter 1500. He says, the size makes it quite dressy and vintage and a little bit fragile at times, which does not always fit with my lifestyle too well, as I travel quite a lot, especially in summer. My current financial situation would possibly allow me to get into another Rolex, part as a place to park my money, part as enjoyment. I inquired at my local authorized dealer about the Rolex Air King, the new 40 millimeter variant, as I love the polarizing dial and fancy the idea of a larger Rolex and a much more usable one. One of my friends has a Milgauss, and I don't mind the bigger size. Additionally, I think that the Air King is an interesting way to store some money, especially as it might get discontinued soon. With some luck, I could get one in 2021. The other option is a Rolex 114270 Explore 36 millimeter. Which I love for different reasons. The dimensions on my wrist, the simple dial, the history, the elegance, and the more vintage feel with that lovely 5-digit steel sports clasp. Both watches are about 6,000 euro, which is about 7,200 USD or 760,000 yen, and would be an addition to my 1500 date, which I will never sell. Value retention is important to me because I'm a student and I do not have infinite amounts of cash. So what would you do? Air King or Explorer? Watch shop dealer, talking about the gray market pre-owned 36 millimeter Explorer 2, or possible Rolex AD buying experience. I am torn between both. All right, interesting question. Again, I love these dilemmas, and there's a lot to talk about. Now, I think, personally, you've got the vintage thing covered. You know what it's like to get a pre-owned watch, kind of a fragile watch. That's not to say that the Explorer 36 millimeter is not going to be a robust watch. It'll be certainly a step up from what you have in terms of usability, wearability. No more acrylic crystal. It'll have the sapphire crystal, a more modern movement. It'll be a stronger, more wearable watch. But the even more modern Air King is likely going to be even more wearable. That's debatable, actually, because they're both 6-digit watches, but the Air King is going to have that Faraday cage. You're not going to have to worry at all about magnetization. Not that I really worry about it with my 5-digit models, but it's just something you can just put to rest. Any thoughts of magnetization, and it's a bigger watch, and if you do get that watch, you're going to be getting it new, unpolished, unmolested, box and papers, new AD experience. That's something you haven't experienced yet, something I've never experienced. So to me, that would be the way to go, the Air King, all right? Because it's going to give you that bigger watch, 40 millimeters, and the Explorer is only 2 millimeters bigger. So I don't think it's going to offer you that different of an experience over your 1500. Certainly wearability and strength, yes, but it's not that much bigger, all right? And the dial is really interesting with the Air King. Now, the dial is, as you put it, polarizing, and it's kind of like, I think it's so polarizing and so colorful and so unique that the risk there is that you get tired of it. And so in that sense, the 36 millimeter Explorer is going to be, in my opinion, more wearable long term. That's not a dial you're going to get tired of easily. It's really vanilla, okay? And that's a good thing. Whereas the dial of the Air King, if we can choose a flavor, what would it be? It would be just something really pungent that is amazing when you first put it in your mouth, but after the 5th bite, all right, you've had enough. And so it's good that you have the 1500 to go back and forth with the Air King. If you were selling your 1500, then I would say go with the Explorer, just because it's going to be more wearable in more situations. But you have the 1500 to jump back to, so I think having that new experience would be amazing. And again, it's a watch that should be easily able to be acquired, well, more so than, say, a Daytona or GMT or a Sub or anything like that. So it possibly could happen. Now, these are both no-date watches, and I don't know how I feel about that. Ask yourself, Jacob, do you use the date on your 1500 a lot? If so, you might find these watches you're thinking about a little bit lacking. And I can't help but wonder, Jacob, if you want to get another Rolex, but you're shooting low, all right? Because A, you think these will be easier to acquire, or B, because they're within your budget. I mean, I would step back and ask yourself, do you really want these two watches, or are you settling? I mean, would you really rather have a GMT Master 2, but you're thinking, well, I can't get one, and so I'm going this route? Now, that would be very telling. I mean, if you're really honest with your feelings and you say, yeah, I mean, all things being equal, I would rather go for a GMT Master 2. Well, we're in a bit of a pickle because you're likely not going to be able to find one at an authorized dealer, but you could go pre-owned 5-digit. My whole point of just bringing this up is that I find myself thinking about a brand new Datejust. I think I could probably pull one off at an authorized dealer. The whole question, though, is, do I really want one? I mean, am I going for the Datejust because I think I could get it over something I would really want, like a BL&R? It's a good question. I can't really answer that, but I don't think I'd be thinking about a Datejust if Subs and BL&Rs and Daytonas were in the cases ready to be purchased. And so that's what makes me step back and say, yeah, no, can't do the Datejust. And so I would ask yourself, if it's not the price that's drawing you to these watches, the ability to easily acquire them over something you would rather have. And again, if you answer and you say, yeah, I would rather have one of these watches, well, my advice would be to wait, okay? Now, I also want to touch on this because he's a college student. He's got a chunk of money. He talks about parking it in these watches. And I know what he's thinking. He's thinking, I can get another watch and my money will be safe and I'll be able to use it. Look, you put money in that watch, and if you ever want that cash, you're going to have to sell the watch. I mean, these aren't stocks we're talking about. You'll have emotional investment in this watch. It will hurt to sell it. So to park your money in it, I mean, you're not really being realistic. And it seems to me you come from a family with money. Your dad's a doctor. And so if I didn't know that, and I thought you're a guy that had gotten together this money, you haven't gotten a job yet, you're still a student, I'd say just wait. You'll get a job, you'll be able to earn the money, and none of this talk of parking your money. Now, because your dad's a doctor, and I think you come from a family with money, and you probably have a little bit of a safety net if things go bad, okay, maybe you can do that, all right? Maybe you can afford to do that. It's a luxury a lot of people don't have. If I knew nothing about your past other than you were a student and that you had a chunk of money and you're thinking of, quote, parking your money in a watch, I'd say, no, just finish your school, enjoy your 1,500 and get a job and then go from there. But again, you seem to have a safety net, so maybe you can afford to make this decision, which I don't think is probably altogether that prudent, all right? But look, we're watch guys and we do crazy things. So I know where you're coming from, but I would ask yourself two questions, all right? Do you really want these watches, okay? Or are you settling? Are you gonna be okay with no date on your watch? And if the answer is no, and I am settling, I would consider going pre-ceramic, all right? We'll just leave it at this, okay? You've identified two watches. I'm going to assume that you're okay with the lack of a date. I'm assuming that these really are watches you want. You're not settling or, shooting low. The Air King, okay? Brand new experience, and it would give you the bigger size, more wearability. It's going to be a heavier watch because of that Faraday cage. Certainly an interesting dial variation, something completely different than what you have. And again, you have that 1,500 to bounce back and forth with. And like you said, I mean, you're speculating here. Are they going to change that in the future? Are they going to discontinue it? It's interesting. I don't think they'll discontinue it because it's the Air King. It's a big part of the Rolex history, but they might change it aesthetically in some way. And that would be an awesome watch to have, because can you imagine if they changed it aesthetically? It would just it would become an instant classic, an instant collectible watch. And the 36mm Explorer, there are a ton out there, and unless they just were to discontinue the Explorer, that's never going to happen, then those 36mm Explorers are just going to sort of, they're going to go up gradually, but they're not going to just spike like a discontinued or heavily aesthetically altered Air King would. So Air King, Air King, Air King, that's what I would go with. But ask yourself those questions. Date, would you want something 5-digit with more functions? Okay, something to ask yourself. Guys, let Jacob know what he should do. Do you agree with my advice? Do you disagree with it? Drop a comment in the comment section. Consider subscribing, like this video. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.